Welcome to another episode of the Balanced Growth Show. I'm Dr. Perry. Today I have with us Sam Gembel. Sam is the owner and founder of the award-winning landscape company Atlas Outdoor, quartered in Flint, Michigan. He founded in his driveway in 2011 with just himself and a couple of employees. This company rapidly grew to over 5 million in annual sales in just 5 years. And Sam says made just about every mistake you can think of and applied to the growth, right? Today, Atlas has grown into one of Michigan's most successful landscape companies. Their team is rooted in a people focused culture, delivering operational excellence with an innovative and driven leadership. If you know Sam, he's has an extreme passion for personal growth and leadership development, and strives to make everyone proud of around him, push to be the best version of themselves. Outside of Atlas, Sam is a business coach and mentor to hundreds of landscape companies all across North America. He is also endorsed by John Maxwell as a coach, leadership trainer, and public speaker. When Sam isn't speaking, coaching, or leading his team at Atlas Outdoor, he's dedicated to his family and sharing his journey as a podcast host with the Culture Proof podcast. Sam, welcome to the show, my friend.
It is truly an honor to be here, Dr. Perry. Thank you for having me on. And yeah, as our paths crossed and learning, your journey with how you just want to help people grow, but obviously, more importantly, the way you love on your wife and love on your kids, but still tie that to business. It was an instant attraction for me to want to get connected with you and learn more about you. And it is truly an honor to be on the other side of this podcast. And I'm excited to unpack the journey with you.
Sounds awesome. Thank you for being here and making time for this. I always like to start with, well, tell us, how did you get here? What's the story? Tell us quickly, like, how did you get to be a landscape, owner or landscape company owner and a leader and now speaker and podcast host? Talk to us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, without taking up our whole episode about the journey, but just it humbly said, it's almost kind of there's ever a day when I get imposter syndrome or the devil likes to infiltrate my spirit. It's on days when I get to do stuff like this, and because definitely feel like it's hard to think that we deserve it and get a chance to do things like this. But a little bit about me: born and raised in the city of Flint. My mom was a certified nursing assistant, or my dad would refer to her as a professional butt cleaner. And my dad was kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. Basically, just worked to put food on the table. Like literally, I think saying that I grew up very kind of poor is almost an understatement. Went to City of Flint schools. Met my now wife. She was my high school sweetheart. We've been together. You would never know this by looking at her, but she is 2 years older than me. So when she went on to graduate, for me, I really didn't see a need to be in school anymore. And so my wife, she graduated, went off to college, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go get a job because I felt like my parents just worked, and that's kind of where I wanted to be. And they say that you become who you are because of the example that your parents set for you. And I think that could be in a good way or in a bad way. And I always kind of knew just growing up with how my parents, you got one new pair of shoes a year. We were Kmart kids, for those of you that know about Kmart, and we lay away for Christmas gifts. And I just remembered like seeing how much they struggled to provide for me and my two sisters. And I never wanted to go that road. So what's wild is, I dropped out of high school. I got a customer service job, and nothing spectacular. And in 2001, I actually got my first job in the landscape industry, just cutting grass. And I had grew up like as a young kid, kind of cutting grass with a push mower with my dad, just kind of going through the neighborhoods, push mowing lawns, and but never did it like commercially. And when I got a taste and smelled that smell of the fresh cut grass, like I just fell in love with it in 2001 when I first started doing it. And I was, worked my way into a crew leader position at the company. And when I was 24, by 24, I had became kind of a production manager, and it was a smaller business, but I was making almost 40 grand a year. And at that point, by 24, I was already making more money than my parents had made. And by now I had moved out and moved in with my then girlfriend, my now wife, and we got married. We bought our first home together in 2005. Kind of did it backwards. Got married in 2006. The journey kept going with cutting grass. When we bought our first home, we were kind of in a suburban area. We moved out of Flint, and I would take my I bought it my own zero turn mower to drive up and down the road that we lived on, which was Atlas Road, hence where the name Atlas Outdoor came from. And I had no idea then. I really just did it to make extra money, and I enjoyed cutting grass. Like that's if I could just do that, I was perfectly fine. And my wife had graduated college. She had went into more of the corporate world. She was a human resource manager. And in 2010, I'm a drummer, like, my own little average rock star drummer back then. And so I was playing in a couple bands. I had my little side business, which wasn't much with Atlas. And then I still worked a full-time job cutting grass during the day. And in 2010, we had our first child, which was our daughter. And my wife really, really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and she had the corporate benefits. She had all the frills, and so it was really, really hard. When her leave had came up, and it's going towards the end of 2010, and she's got to go back to work. And I could just tell that there was this uneasiness about that, and so we made the decision after much prayer, which was my relationship with God wasn't nowhere near like it is today, but I at least believed. But we had prayed on it, and we felt peace, and more so, I knew that I had a why. I knew that I had a job to do, and so she quit. She's home now with our daughter, and in 2011, the spring is kind of kicking off, and my super supportive wife and mother of our daughter and best friend, she's like, I feel like you need to just go full time with your side business. And
Wow.
a friend of mine was kind of getting out of the landscape industry, and he had a couple customers, nothing crazy, but he's willing to give me his customers if I would just take them on. But it was going to make my business be much more than a side business had I did that. But I'm thinking to myself, like, I need to replace like another 30, 40 grand in income with my wife. I had already kind of built it up some with some more customers, but when he wanted me to take over his customers, it was going to be a little bit too much. So I had actually went to my boss at the time, and which was kind of weird. Like, I cut grass during the day, but then I also am going to be doing this after hours for myself. And I had said to him, hey, I feel like I'm working too much on both ends. Maybe I could work less hours at my day job. And he, probably much like I would say to any of my employees now, did not like that idea. And he's like, well, I think you need to pick. You either need to go do
Right.
your business, or and I went all in. Just felt peace, went all in with Atlas. And without unpacking too much of the journey from there, June 10th, 2011, Atlas Outdoor, the LLC is born. And our business went on. I mean, obviously God just had much bigger plans for it than we realized. And we did about 300 grand in just hustle revenue the first year. But as you mentioned in the intro, we went on to grow $1 million a year for the first 5 years of business. Like, no idea what we were doing. The only system was that we had no systems. My wife, after we had our son in 2013, she was kind of dabbling with coming into the business because I needed help. And she brought kind of the corporate HR side to Atlas. And, fast forward to today, 110 employees, two locations here in Michigan.
Nice.
My wife handles like the HR and that side of the business, and I'm obviously sales and leadership development. And yeah, I mean, we've got two kids now at the recording of this episode. Our son is 12 and our daughter is almost 15. And yeah, it's been a crazy journey to get to be on both sides, to do a business with your wife and your best friend, and also be married to your business partner, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
here we are
awesome.
today recording a podcast together.
I mean, that journey, and I appreciate it. I know it's sometimes hard to get every detail in, but that journey is a progression. It's development. It's change over time, as we call it. And I can see that with you and what you're doing. It's also a great story for others to hear who maybe are feeling like they're trapped in their current situation, like they can't change, and there's no other options, and yet you went ahead and you pushed forward despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, which so many entrepreneurs, like, that's what we do every day. We have to, and that's part of the part of the even the spiritual journey. Russell Brunson, even the other day, talks about this constantly. Like, hey, being a business owner, an entrepreneur, is the most spiritual thing you can do. Literally every day, you're putting your faith to the test. And I'm paraphrasing what he says, but
So true
I
though.
I believe it, man. I honestly believe it, and the fact that you're together with your wife running the business is so fun for you guys. So let's switch gears a little bit. What do you see as the biggest issue, problem, situation that other business owners, maybe even in the landscape industry or business owners in general, face to try and grow and scale without completely destroying their lives?
Yeah, it's so good, and it goes two ways. Like if you're talking, if I'm talking to the business owners that happen to be couplepreneurs with their wife within their organization, like that's a whole nother podcast we could do. But speaking to the person that's just on the other side, like just like me, for many years, I held on to that safety net of having the guaranteed paycheck and going all in with the business, and I think at first. Pastor, I think it was Robert Stanley. It was Andy's dad. Pastor, was it Robert Stanley? Yeah, I think I'm right on that. But he had said he had a story in one of his episodes, one of his podcasts, where he talked about uh, cutting the safety net. And when he was getting into ministry, he had all these letters that people had sent saying, man, you're such a great leader, you're such a great ambassador for the kingdom. Like, hey, if you're ever looking, for an opportunity, we'd love to have you come lead our church. We'd love to have you do this. And he had all these letters, and he said, when I start my ministry, if it doesn't work out, I know I've got all these backup plans. And I talk about this in one of the few of the blogs I did in a few of my podcasts about burning the ships, right? Where like there is no turning back. And one of the things I think was the driving force to our early success and growth was literally burning the ships, like knowing that I didn't have that paycheck that I was going to have on Fridays anymore. And so I think when you know that there is no plan B, if you always have in the back of your mind that you have a plan B, I think that that's always going to be something that's going to hold you back from pushing yourself outside of that comfort zone of going all in. And the other side of that, whether your spouse is with you within the business or not, just having that support system. I think even through some of the darkest years of business, where literally like we didn't have money to make a payroll on a Friday, and thank goodness God always delivered, and we never were not able to pay our bills or pay our employees, even though we got pretty darn close. But my wife never made me feel guilty about that. She never said like, "Oh, honey, I don't know if we should do this. Maybe you should go back and get a job." And I remember like all of our old, I call them my institutionalized life, the very small-minded people that I had kind of surrounded myself, out of high school, and that early 20s and up to late 20s group of friends that weren't entrepreneurs. They were not thinking about building a better tomorrow. And like so many people used to say, well, maybe like go to Home Depot and just get something where you can get some benefits. You've got a daughter at home that you need insurance for. And everybody, like, it's all they ever talk about. Instead of persevering through the dark times, it was always like a safety plan. Like, no, I don't want the safety net. And so when I knew that there was no plan B, that would be like my advice to the person that's either wanting to go all in on, if they're running a side hustle, which in my world, which obviously I'm blessed to get to speak to entrepreneurs of all different industries, not just the landscape side, but it just seems like landscaping and painting and all the home service businesses, a lot of them start as a side hustle. The person's got a full-time gig, and sometimes it's a good full-time gig. They're, in the medical world, or they're doing something, but they want to cut grass or do something after hours on the weekend. And they're passionate about that quote unquote side hustle, but they've just got that comfort of that paycheck. And you're never going to know what's on the other side of God's plan for you until you take action with that.
That's well said. It's just that getting past the fear, right? Getting past the doubt and the fear, it just can absolutely cripple people and make them really never do the things in life that they've always wanted to do. I'm not saying you have a bucket list and do it in a week. I don't think that's realistic for most of us. But like you said, it hits a point where your wife turned to you and said, "Hey, why don't you just do this full time?" It probably took her to like slap you a little bit, like, "Hey, come on, buddy, let's go." What are you
God,
doing?
God, God, God doesn't bless the decision, he blesses the action.
There you
And
go.
so you can make the decision that you're going to do something. You can make the decision that you're going to be a healthier you, or you can make the decision that you want to work on your marriage or work on your finances or whatever. But God doesn't bless the decision, he blesses the action. And so I'm a firm believer that, if you want to see how, he can work in your life, you got to take action, because otherwise you're never going to know, never going to know.
Yeah, well said. I think that what this has done for so many business owners when they've decided to move past this fear, right, is they embrace opportunities that they never knew actually existed. We kind of have this idea in our mind, oh, this is where I'd like my business to be, or like my health to be, or whatever it might be they're wanting to work on, but they're afraid to make that change. But after they make the change, it is as if God opens up other doors and like, hey, you I didn't show this to you before, but now here's all these other things that are going to be in your life, or people or resources or whatever. And I think, when we started homeschooling, for example, like we had no idea, and then all of a sudden there's all these resources, all these people, and all this help. I'm like, whoa, I never knew this existed. But until you make that choice with the business, with parenting, with your relationship, whatever, your health, you don't know what might be on the other side of that choice. So I think that's interesting that you talk about how God blesses us. I can see that. So talk to us. If you're speaking on stage, you're coaching other business owners. How do you help them to get past the fear? Like, tell us some steps or a framework, if you have one, of things that you do or that's helpful, so others might be able to understand a little bit about how they can become less fearful or overcome the fear and doubt that they have.
Yeah, I think a good segue into that is talking about the reason 90% of the reason that people stress about things is lack of action. So when you know you've got to do something, the most stressful headspace thing is the time frame between what's going on and what your next steps are. So, I always encourage, whether it's a business owner or even one of my, 100 plus team members, to just do it, to just try it and take the steps towards it. And then when they realize, kind of like, it's like a business is, it's a lot like raising children. You guys have raised 8 of them, but when your kid is like super afraid to take that first step, but then once they do it, they kind of look at you and now they get that giddiness to them and they're all excited. That's kind of the same way in business. I like to say something is only significant until you can have it for yourself, but you don't know where the significance lies if you're not taking the first steps. So, there's not, I'd give somebody $50 if they brought me a problem they're facing in their business, that of the 14 plus years of our entrepreneurial journey, of a mistake that I haven't made or seen or had to lead my way through. And they were brutal. I mean, one of them being a pandemic that some of y'all might have heard of. I mean, like so many different things have changed and evolved, including me with my leadership. And so, I look back 14 years ago and I think to where I'm at today. And if I was hiring for my role in the business now, I would not have hired 14-year ago Sam to do my job today. I've had to evolve as a leader. I've had to grow as a leader. And oftentimes, and I struggled with this when we were growing through those massive $1 million growth years, the first ones, I found it easier for me to hold my people accountable than I was myself. And so you want to talk about imposter syndrome. Like, I would get on them about something, but here I am, I'm struggling with my weight. I'm struggling with like a morning routine. Like, I would get up 10 minutes before I needed to be out the door and I would rush out the door with my hair on fire. But here I am mentoring another business owner that wants to grow about, hey, allow yourself time to do this and do that. But on I was no different myself. Like I could teach it, but I wasn't modeling it and practicing it. And I really do think that our life and leadership changes when we start with growing ourselves first. So one of the biggest things I double down on with if it's somebody I'm coaching, mentoring, whatever, is honestly just personal growth. Like what are they doing for themselves? Like if they're
Yeah.
struggling with the morning routine, like just start 10 minutes earlier and take some action towards it and take those first steps and be like, wow, before you know it, you're getting up an hour earlier. Now let's introduce a book study, or if you want to grow in your spiritual journey, we could talk a whole episode about reading the Bible and getting that discernment about your day from God. But that's a whole nother episode. But I would start with that. Start with growing yourself first, because it's actually a lot easier to hold other people accountable. But you gain credibility when your people see that you're going first. There's a lot more merit when you want somebody to do something, whether that's a coaching client or one of my employees, when they see that, hey, I see you talk the talk, but I also want to see you walk the walk. And so who am I to want to coach somebody on, getting in better physical shape or working on their marriage if I'm struggling with, our sex life, or struggling with our date nights or whatever. Like you gotta put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help others. And so I know it's a long version of that answer, but I think it's a really, really important one.
What would you say, personal growth, development, like that could be so many things. And I love that concept. Yeah, I believe it. I teach it. In all my books, you stress this idea of developing and growing either as an individual, as a couple. So what would you personally say is the most important step if they could do one thing in any of the, areas of growth and personal development that you would suggest is the most vital?
That there's so many things to put in that I would say are the same. But if I just had to pick one, and I know this sounds wild for the guy that was once 320 pounds when I married my wife, but I think health and wellness would be number one. I really do think when you prioritize getting your butt out of bed early and getting your butt in the gym, and when you can have that discipline to do hard things, I feel like I think that that's number one. I think if you prioritize your health and wellness, there was an article I read. I forgot who the author was, but he talked about this with he had a coaching client that was struggling big time with depression, and he told the guy, he said, hey, I know this sounds funny. I am by no means a six pack dude, but I do work out 6 days a week and take care of myself. And but he said, he gave him a challenge. He said, I want you to get a six pack. So do whatever you got to do to get a six pack. And this guy was going to like go on all kinds of medicine and all kinds of things to help with his depression. He said, just do it. And then if you still need the medicine, then maybe you go that route. But that guy did it. He went and got in the gym and hired a trainer and went through all, the different nutrition things and stuff like that. And ironically, his depression went away. So I'm not saying that the two are correlated, but I think when you prioritize your health and wellness first, like me and my wife, she's working on her morning routine, but she's up at least enough time for us to get to go to the gym together. And I love our time when we get to go do that. We get to go work out together, and there's a dopamine hit that you get when you break a sweat. And so I think one of the number one ways to start with personal growth and development, I could talk about books to read, hire yourself a coach, all the things, which I think are all important. But I think number one, and I think any good business coach is going to tell you, you got to prioritize your health and wellness.
Yes. And it is correlated. What's interesting, there's been holistic doctors for years and years and years saying diet and exercise are, more closely related to helping you, obviously in the natural forms, to help you with your mental health. We tend to cut off the head and say mental health. It's not associated with the body. Anyone who's ever studied the body know that every system, while it operates within its own boundaries, is related to everything else. So you
Mm,
can't tell me that the brain is not associated with what the body is eating, what the body is listening to, what it's seeing. what it's smelling. Why? Because all of those senses, even touch, like our skin is the largest organ in our body. So even anything that we touch, put on our skin, goes into our body. Therefore, it all comes back to the brain. All the sensations, they all come back to the brain. So, I, I've known this forever and ever, but then the UK did a study, well, not the entire UK, but a study out of the UK came out just a couple of years ago saying, showing that when doctors would prescribe exercise, just exercise, not even changing diet or anything, but just exercise, how it improved ADD and depression and some of the basic, stress, anxiety, depression. Those are the standard, you know, we call it the SAD symptoms, standard mental health conditions, were vastly improved, greater than the Adderall, the Ritalin, and the other things that are prescribed. So he's onto something there, and that's a great example of how just working on oneself and the physical health, is vital to that. So let's break this down really simple. What are two or three things that someone can do right now to improve their personal development and their health? What would you tell them if they were on a coaching call with you or you were on stage and say, hey, these are the two or three things that I
Yeah.
would suggest you do right now?
Yeah, and I think it all comes back to where they're at in their journey. And I know everybody's, I always have to say, because I did this for years, I made a lot of decisions and I made a lot of mistakes in my business because I was comparing my chapter 2 or chapter 3 to somebody else's chapter 12 or chapter 13. And so, I'm a big believer on quit quit thinking, go big or go home. Like we hear that, we wear that like a badge of honor, right? Like go big or go home. Like you see it with all the people that everybody looks up to with the fancy cars and all this and this and that. And I think you should strive for great things in life. Um, but I would rather dial that back and not say don't go big or go home. How about go do the next right thing? And so, thinking of wherever people are at in their journey, depending on what it is, but when we're talking about the personal development, when you know why you want to do something, what you if you've at least gotten to that point that you at least know you can see this vision in your head of what you want your life to look like. So let's just say that they've got that. If you don't have that, that's one of them. Where picture your life as a movie and you're the main star in the movie. Uh, it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now. What do you want your life to look like? And all of it. I'm talking finances. What do you want it to look like in your marriage, as with your children, with your if you lead a ministry, if you lead a business, that's the movie. This is the biography or whatever you call that, right? It's your movie. And then when you see that, write the narrative backwards to where you want to be. And so when you look at that, like, okay, if one of the things in that movie is like, well, I'm in good shape. I know it sounds funny to say that, but like the health and wellness thing really, I think having a morning routine that's 2 hours long before the world needs you will change your life. I will die on that mountain. If the world, whatever time that is, if you know what time the world needs you. So if you work a job, and your shift is from 8 to 3, because you got a 9 to 5 or 8 to 3, whatever it is. If you work a job and you have to be on your road on the road to that job by say 7, because you got a little commute, whatever that looks like, you should allow yourself 2 hours to get into the headspace that what the day is going to bring you. And in that 2 hours, whatever you choose to do, whether you're a believer in God or whatever, even just spending quiet time to just meditate and seek clarity over what the day is going to bring. So, we could talk about being organized, having everything in a calendar. So, I'm a big fan of time boxing. So I like to know each day, days in advance, what's on my to-do list, but also what's on my to-don't list. And I like in the morning, Get up. And I'm so like, if I was ever writing a book one day, I would title it Boring Your Way to Success. And people would be like, boring like a drill? No, 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 no. I'm talking boring. Like, same thing every day, consistency, and let the consistency compound. When I first started a morning routine, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I'd get up, and you know what I did? I'd go to work. I'd get up early and get in my email, and I thought I was getting like a 2 hour jump start on, my day, which I probably was, but I wasn't working on myself, and it took my wife one day saying, Sam, like, I love you, but you look like beep. I was like, what? She's like, you're letting yourself go. Like, you're so focused on growing others, you're just not taking care of yourself. And she was so right. I had lost like our pre-marriage weight, but then it was like, I just wasn't, my mental health wasn't good. And so, and I come back to that, just having that 2 hours in the morning to get in the headspace for whatever the world's going to throw at you. It will help you to prepare to problem solve if you've at least put on your armor for the day. So what happens is we get in these routines. You're listening to this podcast right now. This is going to resonate with you. But you ever have those days where you get home and you feel like you didn't accomplish anything? We'll pause for a quick second right here. I want you to think about that. I'm talking to you right now. I
Yeah.
feel like I didn't get anything done today. A lot of times, the reason we feel like that, it's not that we didn't accomplish 10 things throughout the day. But the problem is the things you accomplished were all for other people. It was task. It was things that you needed to do to help maybe other people move their needle forward, but you didn't do anything for yourself. And what I mean by that is you didn't read anything. You didn't listen to a Dr. Perry podcast to help you grow in your leadership and grow in your journey. You didn't get to the gym. You told yourself that you're not eating, crap food anymore. But when the office said, "Hey, we're ordering McDonald's for lunch. Does anybody want anything?" You're like, "Yeah, I'll start that diet tomorrow." And so the reason you got home and you felt like you didn't get anything done is because you just didn't do the things that you are convincing yourself that you want to do. And I think, like, I'll come back to what I said earlier, the God doesn't bless the decision, he blesses the action. And when you can start to get that momentum going, you will become an unstoppable force in your leadership. And that's in all areas, whether you're a business person, whether you lead a ministry, you just lead in your, I say just, you lead in your household, you lead your family, you lead groups, whatever that is. Get that momentum going for yourself first and watch it manifest itself and multiply itself into something that you never would have thought was imaginable.
Love it. Love it. These are great tips. I mean, there's solid time management, kind of reverse engineering your future. Boring is better than this hype, right? That we're all being shoved down our throat with marketing and advertising literally everywhere we turn. And getting on that solid footing. I really appreciate your thoughts, your input today. Um, if there's one thing you want to leave with, or have people, find you and can contact you if they want to, continue this conversation offline and get to know you, great. Or any words of wisdom you want to leave us with, be my guest here. This is your time to shine. Tell us where we can find you, or what last words of wisdom you would share, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so first and foremost, thank you, for the opportunity to get our message out there, both of us, right? And just share this with the world. We both have a passion to help other people grow. And I'm a firm believer. I'm very, very passionate about leadership. And a lot of people ask me why. And I always say it's because when we as leaders get better, we all get to move forward together. And so, with that said, uh, it's an honor to get to take the things that I know worked for me, and get to share them with other people. So I'm an open book, as I mentioned to earlier, with growing a business and being a dad and being a husband and most importantly, like, I think having a great marriage. Me and my wife, in March, we'll have our 20-year anniversary, and getting to do that while stewarding a business and sitting on multiple nonprofit boards and being a dad and being a chaperone for my daughter's band camp and a son in travel soccer and to just looking at all those things and like seeing like, man, how do we make it all work? But I think a lot of it has to do with because I've worked really hard to eliminate the noise in my life. And I know it's everybody's heard like the colloquial, maybe they haven't, but the jar story where if you took a jar and you filled it full of golf balls and then you put the pebbles on top and then you fill the top of it full of sand and how when you don't make room for the other things, when you fill your life full of all the small things. And I've worked really hard to just eliminate the stuff in my life that's not adding value. And my wife has been a big advocate of that with me too. She's always like, every time you're going to make a Facebook post or a LinkedIn post or whatever you're doing, even when you're going to say something, and I hear her tell us to our kids all the time, she's like, is it going to add value to the world? And I think if you could just focus on that and know that whatever, you're feeling called to do, whether it's start a business, better your leadership, work on your marriage. I mean, why do you want to do it? And by through that, what are you doing to add value to the world? And I think if you can, start with like we talked about with the morning routine, making a to-do list for the day, making a to-don't list for the day, engineering your life backwards, what you want it to look like. I mean, I really do think you can be an unstoppable force. Um, and I would be honored to answer any questions about that, or if anybody just wants to connect and say, "Hey, this is what I'm dealing with." I'm an open book, and so you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, all the different platforms, or just shoot me an email to sam@samgembel.com. It feels crazy to have my own website name, but it's out there,
Love
and
it.
I'm super super proud about that, and I love to help people grow. So thankful for the opportunity for today.
Absolutely. If you guys enjoyed this, reach out to Sam at samgembel.com. Great resource to have in your pocket as you're moving forward in your own balanced growth journey. If you haven't picked up my new book, Marry and Grow Rich, go to www.marryandgrowrichbook.com. We're still giving that away for $4.95 download, and we're giving you the audiobook and the workbook all together. So if you want some additional help on growing your business while keeping your balance and have the success that you always wanted there to 10x your business and without going crazy, please just give it a shot. And if you've liked this, like, share, subscribe, do all the things. And until next time, remember, live life on purpose.